Hi, my name is Julie Woodruff, and I'm going to be talking to you today about consumer debt. So first, I want to give you a little bit of history. I learned some things when I worked on this. Consumer debt, or the idea of the loans, actually started in 1919 with the General Motors Acceptance Corporation, and they started giving car loans. So they made cars and they realized most people didn't just have the cash to buy them, so the whole idea of a loan started. Then in 1925, General Motors started coming out with a new car every year, a new model, the latest and the greatest, which was sort of the beginning of consumerism because everybody wanted to keep up with the Joneses and to have the newest car. So that kind of spurred more loan activity. Then 1929 to 45, we had the Great Depression and the war, but during that time, advertisers spent quite a bit of time marketing to Americans the new products that were going to be coming out. They were promised when the war was over and economic times were better, so people were gearing up for that. And then in the 1950s, Diners Club came out with a credit card. So that was the beginning of that, and that it was marketed as a convenient tool for businessmen to use when they travel. What was not talked about or marketed was the trouble that people can get into with credit cards. So this may be a little bit difficult to see, but it talks about the American debt. And right now, the average American household has about $140,000 in debt. Though that is people that actually have debt, not everyone. That's everyone, including people that don't have any debt and those that have debt. When you look at just the people that have debt, so the people that are debt-free are taken out of the mix, the average mortgage is about $168,000. Credit cards are about $15,700 and some change. And credit card debt actually topped $714 billion in 2015. So an enormous debt with high interest a lot of times. The average American with debt has an automobile loans of $27,000. And I was very surprised to see that the average American household with debt has student loans of $48,000. So that is a whole topic that I will get into a little bit later. Was surprising to me. And as you can see, that has risen dramatically from 1947, which is the beginning of this graph, to 2015. It's just continued to climb. So why do we care? What is caused by debt? Since the recession in 2008, a lot of professional jobs have been replaced with service jobs. So the pay is not equivalent. There are fewer professional jobs available. And a lot of Americans have used credit cards to fill that gap in income. So they didn't change their lifestyle, they just continued with their spending habits even though their income was less. And that sets us up for future problems. So with that increased debt, then they have a higher increased debt than they do the income, and so it's difficult for them to pay off the principal. So they keep adding to the debt without getting any of it paid off, and that eventually increases the amount of loans that get defaulted on or credit cards, which then leads to recession, and the whole circle starts over again. So how does that affect the whole economy? Well, when our debt gets to be 90% of our gross domestic product, it actually drives up interest rates, private investment, inflation, and it really can be a severe hardship on the lower income families and people that are on a fixed income because they don't have a means to increase what they're bringing in. Money is no different than any other consumable. which I never really thought of it that way, but if you think of money like you do widgets, and think about supply and demand, if there's a lot of demand for widgets and we don't have enough widgets, it increases the price of widgets. And that supply and demand kind of evens things out. If you have a whole lot of widgets and people don't really want widgets, then the price of the widgets go down and more people are willing to buy them at the lower price. With money, interest rates is basically the price. So for us to borrow money, the price we have to pay for that is the interest rates. So when there's a lot of money in the system, so people are saving, the government has, it's complicated, it's not quite as simple as that because bonds affect interest rates, but when there's a lot of money to be had and the economy is good, then the interest rates are lower. As that dries up, then it increases the cost of interest. So when we have a whole lot of debt, sometimes that can also change the price of money. So what are we going to do about it? When we talk about households or companies, regardless of what it is, some potential solutions are creating a budget. So basically you're going to have to reduce spending and decide what needs to be paid off, prioritizing your debt. Consolidation, so you lump everything, again you're going to have to reduce spending because you can't keep spending at the same rate. But if you lump all your debt together and make one payment, sometimes that's easier for people to do. Some people use a debt management company, and that company negotiates prices to the people that you owe money to. So negotiates payment amounts, interest amounts, etc. Some people file for bankruptcy. Basically, they start over. Some people get some counseling. Just guide me, how can I do this better? And I really think a lot of it, solution is education, so that people understand how you can get in debt, because that can happen fairly quickly, and that really should start sooner than what we start people doing that. So when we talk about the pros and cons of those solutions, so budgeting has some really good pros. It teaches us how to not spend more than we make, right? Because if you have a budget and you stick with it, then you can keep your spending under control. So it's effective, and it doesn't cost money to create a budget. It's basically putting pencil to paper, and this is what I make, these are the things I owe, and you don't spend more than you make. The cons to that is that takes discipline, and for a lot of people, that's the problem. They wouldn't have gotten into that debt situation to begin with if they didn't struggle a little bit with discipline. We all kind of have the I wants. Consolidation, the pros to that is that there's only one bill to pay each month, so it's much more manageable, and it's typically a decreased amount because you can manage that better. The cons, though, are that it still requires discipline, because if you consolidate and you start making that payment and that becomes manageable, so you start spending more, then you're right back where you started. Debt management companies they negotiate lower payments for you with your creditors, maybe lower interest rates, and they make that debt reduction more manageable. But the cons to them are that they charge you fees, so you're also increasing cost to use them, one. And two, if you don't change your habits, you end up right back where you started. So you still have to learn how to manage better. Bankruptcy, the pro is you're no longer in debt, except for student loans, because the government took over student loans several years ago. They realized they were missing out on some major revenue that the private banking industries were getting on this interest on student loans, so they took it over. And if you file for bankruptcy, student loans don't count. You still owe for your student loans. The cons to that are several. One of the biggest is that affects your credit rating, and many things now are affected by your credit rating. When you go to get car insurance, if you have a bad credit score, then it's going to cost you more. If you go to get a home loan, if you don't have good credit, you may have to pay, you're going to have to pay higher interest. They may make you pay a higher down payment. So there's consequences in the future for filing bankruptcy. It's not a get out of jail free card. Counseling, in my opinion, would be beneficial for anyone who is struggling with debt, because unless you change habits and learn how to do that better, you're going to end up back in the same boat. It's like a diet plan that you can't maintain. You may lose the weight, but you're going to gain it back if you don't change habits. Education, though, regardless, I think needs to happen in our country. I don't think a lot of young people understand how quickly you can get in debt and how long it takes you to get out of it. So credit cards are easy, and in a few months' time, you can rack up some huge debt on credit cards because you're handing them a piece of plastic, and until you get your statement, people can spend a few $1,000s and have no idea and not even be sure what they spent it on until they get their bill. And that can take months and months to pay off. So I really feel like that should start in high school, and they should understand better the consequences of debt and understand how interest works, and be better consumers, which I don't think we do a great job of. We would then probably have fewer people get into that situation. They also hand out credit cards very freely. When my daughters were in high school, they started getting, once they got a job, they started getting credit card applications and really didn't have any business having a credit card at that time. So I think those are some of the things we could do to fix that. And then if anyone has any questions.